Hello everyone, I am Grayson the Bard, and welcome back to another Monster Hunter video, question mark. This one is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be talking about something that I've been thinking about a lot lately that I think would be really cool, but probably won't happen. See, as Monster Hunter has exploded in popularity in the West in the recent years, I have been thinking a lot about crossovers. As a series, Monster Hunter has never been shy with its crossovers, touching everything from Final Fantasy to Neon Genesis Evangelion to Metal Gear Solid. And naturally, I think a lot about what kind of crossovers I would like to see with the series. And recently, I thought of one that I think would fit really well, but would also be really difficult to pull off. This will come as no surprise to anyone who's watched my channel for more than 5 seconds, but I love monsters. Monsters for hunting, of course, but also monsters of the pocket, digital monsters, and monsters in manuals. But the most recent addition to my monster fixation is the topic of today's video, and that is Monster Rancher. Originally released for the PlayStation 1 in 1997, Monster Rancher is described as a virtual monster breeder game. And while there is way too much detail on this game to go into in such a short video, the general loop is that you raise a monster that you semi-randomly generate, train it in order to fight in tournaments and raise its stats, and then start the whole process over when you inevitably screw up and your monster dies very young. But at its core, Monster Rancher is a virtual pet game. It is similar to the original Digimon games or even Tamagotchis. The real interesting thing to me, though, is that outside of the tournaments and the combat that you can enter your monsters into, there's really not a lot going on gameplay-wise. This is a menu game. You really just choose options on a menu and see what happens. But it is also really engaging, especially if you're playing without a guide. Every decision you make determines your monster's lifespan, what kind of stat gains it gets, and how much it likes you. All of which goes into unlocking new monsters. There is a monster that you can only unlock by having one of your monsters die, and then taking care of the gravesite for a sizable chunk of time in-game. The monster will then come back as a spirit, and you can then raise it and train it and have it fight for you again. Kind of fucked up, but also really cool. Similar to early Monster Hunter games as well, Monster Rancher was never a huge hit outside of Japan. And similar to Monster Hunter, at least before the release of Monster Hunter World, Monster Rancher has always been kind of a niche series outside of Japan. It was one of a slew of monster-raising games that came out in the 90s that never got that same cultural foothold that Pokemon or Digimon did, and as a result it just kind of faded into the background while still giving good games and good things to their core devoted fans. Now, the series has had an uptick in popularity lately, especially since the original Monster Rancher and its sequel Monster Rancher 2 have gotten ported to Steam and the Nintendo Switch in the West. But it's the most recent game in the series that has really got me thinking about crossover potential with Monster Hunter. And that game is Ultra Kaiju Monster Rancher, which was released in 2022. Now, this game is real interesting because it is essentially just an exact copy of the Monster Rancher formula, but with a crossover with Ultraman Kaiju. You get to train classic Ultraman Kaiju, raise them to be these ultimate fighting machines of destruction, pit them in tournaments against each other, and occasionally they get a little cranky, go on a tantrum, and run amok around your ranch, as Kaiju are wont to do. The fact that this game came out at all, but especially that it came out in the West, is astounding to me. Especially amazing is that the game seems to be doing well. It sold really well, especially in Japan. At time of release, it was the number 2 game on the Japanese eShop, right behind Splatoon 3. And while I was playing the game, the only thing I could really think of was, hey, if Ultraman can get a Monster Rancher crossover, why not Monster Hunter? And the more I think about it, the more sense it makes, especially since we now have the Monster Hunter Stories series, which is all about the bond between the riders in the Monster Hunter universe and their monsties or monster companions. You already get to directly hatch the monsters from the eggs in the Stories series, and play around with the monsters' genes in order to give them new abilities, moves, and elements and what have you. Along that same line, a key component of the Stories universe is the monster versus monster combat. Everything from the mechanics of building your monster to the themes of bonding with a monster as the one that is raising it would all fit really well inside of a Monster Rancher game. Hell, in Monster Rancher, there is a very prominent mechanic where you fuse two monsters together in order to create a crossbreed of the two with its own unique stats and abilities that kind of combines the best of both of the parent monsters. There's already a precedence for this in Monster Hunter, since we all know that a Jan Garuga is just what happens when a Jan Kutku gets real brave with a Rathian. I would be in love with a game like this if it existed. And even if there's not an actual crossover game like we got with Ultra Kaiju Monster Rancher, I would love to see the Stories games in the future, which I hope there will be, because Wings of Ruin sold really well and performed really well, and it just makes sense that we're going to get more. I would love to see them implement some of these kind of features into the game to lean more into the monster raising aspect of it. I personally feel like that would be a little more engaging than the current Stories mechanic of what is essentially an offline gacha of raiding nests and randomly rolling different eggs for different monsters. As much as I love the Stories series, that's the one aspect of it that I kinda wish they would put a little more into. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments if you think that a Monster Rancher style game with Monster Hunter monsters would be something you would play. Had you even heard of Monster Rancher before this video? If not, and you're a fan of Monster Hunter, I strongly encourage you to check it out, because even though they are wildly different games, they scratch that same itch in a weird kind of way. If you like this video and want to see more like it, please feel free to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more. I try to put out at least one video a month, usually a video essay style thing like this, or a build guide for a Monster Hunter game, which will definitely be ramping up again soon since we're going to be getting Title Update 4 in the coming weeks. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you next time.